Good evening, viewers. Today we have with us Mr. Philippe Leruth, President, International Federation of Journalists. This is very important organization in the world and it supports journalists around the globe. Pakistan is not the member of this organization. Pakistan was the member, but now it is not. Why it is not member? I will talk to Mr. President. I will ask many questions in different ways also in this interviews. Let's start interview with Mr. Philippe Leruth. Mr. Philippe, first of all I'd like to know, and my viewers also would like to know, what is the time of establishment of this organization and why it was established?
The International Federation of Journalists was established in 1926. It's a federation of unions and associations of journalists established in countries all over the world, and their objective is to defend the rights of journalists. And when we speak of rights, we speak of moral rights. For instance, we fight for press freedom, freedom of expression, but also material rights. We work for decent working conditions for journalists.
You said in 1926 it was established. So this is a question, a very clear question, obvious question, that was this organization, International Federation of Journalists, was established to counter Russian Revolution, which was occurred in 1917?
No. In 1926, you know, that was shortly after the First World War, and maybe the founders of this federation realized journalists in many countries faced the same problems, and they find it interesting to share the experience. But by that time, when we referred by then to journalists, there was also only journalists working for newspapers and some journalists working for radio, because radio was starting, but they didn't speak of television, and they didn't, of course, speak of internet by that time.
I mean to say, was this federation established to counter or to stop the expansion of USSR through media war or through media propaganda? Is it true?
No, I really don't think so. The purpose was really to defend the rights of journalists, because also in the Western world, I would say, there were countries where the press freedom was not respected. If we have to think of 10 years later, there was the war in Spain, for instance, between the fascists and the democratic forces, the legal Republican forces. We can speak of a Cold War era after the Second World War, when you had the International Federation of Journalists and the International Organization of Journalists, which were competing. But fortunately, in 2006, we were reunited together.
Is there any competitor of International Federation of Journalists, IFJ?
No, as the International Federation of Journalists is the only organization of this type. Of course, when we speak of press freedom, there are many NGOs which fight for press freedom, and we are very happy of this, that we are not the only one to fight for this. There are also journalist organizations, for instance, I think of Reporters Without Borders, who concentrate on press freedom. But I think the specificity of International Federation of Journalists is, one, that it has members all over the world, and two, when we speak of press freedom, we do not only refer to political press freedom, but also to material working conditions, because you can have the best law in a country. If journalists cannot live from their professions, they are not really free.
Next question is, Mr. Philippe, what is the number of your members in IFJ?
Through its members unions, the International Federation of Journalists has almost 400,000 members, but we used to say that we represent 600,000 journalists, because in some countries, even if journalist union has only a limited number of journalists, it represents all journalists.
Now tell me the member countries figure. I mean to say, how many countries are member of IFJ?
That's almost 90 countries, I think. That's the point. But
is Russia also member of IFJ, and when it was given membership?
Yes, evidently they are members, and in Russia, for instance, the Russian Union of Journalists is a member of the International Federation of Journalists.
This is very important question, Mr. Philippe. Are you working like an NGO or an independent organization?
No, we are not an NGO. We are a federation of trade unions and unions, which is not exactly the same as an NGO. We have no contact with governments, but we are a little bit different of classical NGOs, because we have no individual members but organizations which are members.
One thing is also very important for me to know, that what is the criteria of membership of IFJ?
No, we are in 90 countries. We have more than 90 members. But the criteria is very simple. You have to be a union or association of journalists, and only journalists. You must have a trade unionist activity. That means fighting for the moral and the material rights of journalists. And then you have to apply to become a member of the International Federation of Journalists, and the executive committee then discusses the case. And if, I would say, each time the executive committee of the IFJ comes together, that means twice a year, we have new members that we agree on.
This is very important for me, because Pakistan is not a member of your organization, I mean to say your IFJ, but it was in the past, it was member. Now I watched the list which you have disclosed on the internet. In that list, Pakistan's name is not included. Why Pakistan is not member now?
No. Pakistan is certainly a country where we have to be present, and we had a member union in Pakistan. When you are a member of the International Federation of Journalists, you're supposed to pay a fee each year according to your possibilities. If you fail to pay the fee, you fail 3 years, one following another, you are then asked to pay for your debt and to resume paying the fee. If you don't, then you are not a member anymore. And we had a problem of this kind with our Pakistani member union, and we are still in contact and hoping to resume its membership.
This means you do not keep any member without fee. Poor countries who cannot afford your fee cannot be your member?
No, we had a member union, as I told you, who was a member. We had problems with them. We had a discussion with them trying to find a solution, and unfortunately this solution didn't, we didn't find a solution, so we had no choice but to suspend this membership. But as I told you, we still have contacts, and we try to find a solution, and we hope by next Congress next year the Pakistanis will be there again.
You said you have 90 members countries. So other than 90 members, I mean to say UNO has more than 180 members now. So you have only 90. So half of the members who are members of UNO are not your member. So why don't you give membership to other countries?
If they don't ask to become members, we will not force that. Now, in some countries where we find we should have members, we go and try to find unions of journalists which could be members, and we send them an invitation to come. But normally it's the union which applies to and to which tell us we want to become a member of the International Federation.
May I know the membership fee and also your budget, and how do you meet your budget?
Our budget is around, I would say, 400,000 euros, and we live mostly from our members' fees. And also from some projects, we apply for projects which are financed by several institutions. For instance, in Europe, the European Commission, we can get some support for projects. But also in countries, some institution can help us finance projects. But our mere income is from membership fees.
You have to meet your budget, so maybe getting funding from somewhere or from some government. So if government have some agenda and force you to do that, how do you react at that point?
No. When I refer, for instance, for the European Commission launches projects, and we can apply to these projects, but they have no say. Once we are approved, it's our project, and they have no say in the way we are handling it. The very same with some foundations or non-governmental foundations. They have no say in the way we are doing. No, we apply their criteria. If we can get those funds, we use them the way we want.
May I know, when did you become president of IFJ? Are you a candidate for next election?
When I was a candidate in 2016, I said I will be a candidate for one mandate, and normally I shouldn't be a candidate again. I would very much like to have a woman being a president of the next president of the IFJ.
See, constitution is very important for every organization. How do you implement on your constitution?
Yeah, our constitution is our law. The way we are working, we have to follow up all the rules, and that's a reason why, for instance, when a member union doesn't pay its fee, we try to find a solution. And if it keeps on not paying, it cannot be a member anymore. It's really the application of our constitution. And every 3 years, when we have our Congress, the Constitution can be modified on some point or another. We can submit motions to change the Constitution. That's something we do every 3 years.
One thing we'd also like to know, what is the criteria to become president of IFJ? I mean to say, how do you analyze a man who wants to be president? What is your criteria, and how do you meet that criteria?
You just have to be a member of a union which is member of IFJ. Evidently, that's the only criteria.
Should a president or presidential candidate of IFJ be European?
No, certainly not, and we had already a president from outside Europe, and the point is that you just have to come forward to the Congress to say, I am a candidate, have your support of your union, and then if you are elected, you have the majority, you are elected. That's as simple as that.
What do you do when the journalists are killed around the globe? I mean to say, in the war zone areas and in other circumstances, when the governments or the establishment or agencies kill journalists, what do you do?
Well, the main agenda is killing of journalists, and Pakistan is a country where journalists are killed, but we have several countries, and what are we doing? We are fighting against impunity of journalist murderers. You have political repression, and unfortunately in many countries journalists are imprisoned or jailed what do? We are pressing on international level to help them to help them to be free. We are supporting their relatives, their family, their unions to fight for this. And then we have as I said, the working conditions. We support our member unions in every country where they have, for instance, social movements to help to get better working conditions. We provide them with trainings, we provide them with support, and we help them recruit members and so on. That's the way we are working.
How do you work in conflict zones?
That's the most difficult place to work, because anyhow, if journalists have limited access to conflict areas, the journalist union or federations have also limited access. One thing that we offer, for instance, we distribute an international press card, and through this press card we help journalists get good insurance for regions where they are in danger. That's a way we are doing. So that's we also care for training for journalists. If we know journalists are going to work in a conflict zone, for instance, we organize trainings. How do you react when you are facing men with guns? What do you have to do if they are asking you to do things? Or that's something you can learn maybe sometimes from professionals.
Do you train journalists for conflict zones?
We have recently, I would say in the recent month, we had no such trainings, and I couldn't tell you because we organize this in the country itself, and sometimes I should have a note on all trainings we do, but when we do a training in a country, we try to attract as many.
What is the meaning of press freedom in your eye? I mean to say freedom of expression. What do you understand by that?
You cannot, as a journalist, support people committing crimes, for instance. That's clear. You cannot. That's not freedom of expression. But the freedom of expression means defend ideas. For instance, in some countries, people are for the king, and some think a republic would be the best. That is a kind of what I mean by this. If someone says, I don't consider it press freedom saying you must kill your adversaries. This is not an opinion.
How do you see freedom of expression when it is a matter of religion?
It depends on what you mean getting against a religion. Are you a believer, or some people are non-believers? I think they have the right not to be believers. And I know it's a very sensitive topic, and I would limit it by the general principle. You have the right not to be a believer, and you have the right to be a believer, indeed.
You mean to say a non-believer has a right to distort the face or hurt any believers?
No, he has and both have the duty. In the freedom of expression, you have to fight for the right for the other to express his or her convictions. That's the point.
I mean to say, what are the ethical rules? What are the ethics? Can a cartoon be published which can hurt millions and billions of people?
Well, once again, it's a very difficult question to answer because, as I said, you have also ethical rules who prevent you from hurting other people, and Internet has changed the context. If you printed a cartoon in a newspaper, you are free to buy the newspaper or not to buy the newspaper, if you don't agree. But now we live in.
Can we understand the meaning of freedom of expression is creating social disturbance or social disorders?
Once again, it depends on the context. If you are in a country, you must know that it will spread some social trouble. In another one, no. So and the difference now, and it's indeed a very difficult problem to solve, because through the internet you can publish a cartoon on the North Pole, and it will be worldwide distributed, and it's very difficult sometimes to answer the question, because in a country.
See, Mr. Philippe, in most of the areas of the world, the standard of journalism is not very high. How do you work to enhance the standard of journalism around the globe?
I always say to all journalists I meet in the world, I couldn't do it by myself. I can travel to Pakistan and say you should do this. Who am I to do this? We support journalists who are defending their rights and who are, for instance, trying to raise the standards in a country. If they don't do it themselves, I couldn't do it from outside. The principle of international federation is building solidarity to support journalists fighting for their rights, for fighting for the quality of work and so on. The international federation cannot come from outside and impose it in a country. That's impossible.
This is also a very important question I would like to know, and my viewer like to listen. What do you understand by the national interest of a country, and how do you see that?
As I told you, when we speak of media freedom, we speak also of responsibility of the media and of the journalists. And when you tell me if it's harming the national interest, I would have to seriously consider, does it harm the national interest? If I'm not sure by myself, I will probably take advice around me to know whether I can or cannot publish. Because evidently, when you are harming a country's interest, you indeed have to be very cautious to know whether you have the right to publish and what you have to publish. Your question is very general, but it's once again, you have to be a particular case to be able to take into consideration, can we or can't we, may we or mustn't we publish? That's always a difficult question.
You mean to say freedom of expression has limits when it is matter of country?
Well, in the ethical rules, you cannot harm the people. This is a general rule. You cannot add to the people difficulties. So you have to take also this into consideration. If I have an information of which I know it will harm many people, I don't think I'm authorized to publish it. That's clear, because we have ethical rules, indeed.
This is a very interesting question. I would like to know, what will you do if you have a news which is going against your country or country's interest?
I will first consider, and as I said, I will be very, very cautious to know in how does it harm and how. Yes, it needs consideration, very much consideration, and in some cases, some information you might better not publish them. Indeed, but I prefer to take the opposite side and to see how can I publish it without harming my country's interest.
Will you support when it is the matter of national interest or the interest of the nation?
Evidently, because you said two different things. On the one side, we speak of the nation's, the country's interest. On the other side, the government. And in many countries, even in most democratic countries, the government pretend to represent the country's interest. But sometimes you can consider they don't. And if they don't, there's a confusion between their own interest and the country's interest, evidently you have the right to publish. And if you are harmed, evidently we will support you.
How do the intelligence agencies like CIA, Mossad, MI6 and others work in the cover of journalists, and how do you detect them?
I must confess it's very difficult for me to answer this question because some intelligence agency work is made so secretly that you trace it down sometimes years after. And once again, we have to be called by our member unions in the country, which tell us, oh, there is a problem. But the most preoccupying case with, once again, for us with intelligence agency is the way they are tracing the journalist work and spying on them. That's very big preoccupation.
Can an agent of an agency be traced easily, or you think it is very difficult to trace an agent which is in the cover of journalists?
A real training program doesn't exist. We can give some advice sometimes, for instance, but you know, we know, for instance, everyone nowadays uses a smartphone, and we have to recall journalists that a smartphone can trace you down. We are speaking through Skype, we use laptops, we use PCs, and we must know and be aware that some people can watch, listen, or know what we were talking about. And in some circumstances, we would, for instance, advise journalists not to use smartphones, but old handies with cards allowing and phoning only once, and then throwing the card away so they cannot be identified. Sometimes we would maybe advise them to let a written message in a place instead of saying a mail. There are many things we can advise journalists to do, but it's very difficult because we live in a world where we are exposed to observance.
Do you have any record about the journalists which have been killed by the security agencies, military, or the other agencies around the globe?
Well, I couldn't say. We have a number of journalists each year. We have a record of journalists killed in the world, journalists and press collaborators who are killed in the world each year, and it's almost, I would say, between 19 and 150 every year, which means when we mean 150 journalists or press collaborators are killed, it means that 3 journalists or press collaborators a week, and they are killed by military, they are killed by insurgents, they are killed by drug traffickers and so on, and maybe sometimes by intelligence agents, but we make no difference, as a matter of fact.
Is it easy to work like an agent under cover of journalists?
Mostly those people are identified by journalists working in the same area, and if they see it, they would advise their member union. But I have no clear answer on this, because if someone is working with an intelligence agency, he or she makes the very best not to be noticed. You know that.
Now, some interesting question about you I'd like to know, and my viewers would like to hear. When did you join this profession? I mean to say, when did you come in this profession, and where do you work?
I came in the profession of journalist a long time ago. I have been a journalist for more than 40 years now, and I work in Belgium, and I still work for the same news. I work for a newspaper in Belgium. And then the name is L'Avenir, in English, the future.
This is very astonishing that you, for more than 40 years, you have been working for the same organization.
Yeah, not in the same position, but I have been indeed working for the same employer. I was, besides, before I became president of the IFJ, I was president of the Belgian Association of Journalists. For 10 years, I was 9 years vice president of the European Federation of Journalists, and I became president of the International Federation because, as I told you, you can come forward and say I'm a candidate, but mostly you are elected because colleagues all over the world know you because they met you in congresses, in meetings, and they know you are thinking, and they think you could or could not be a good candidate.
Lastly, my viewers and I would like to know about your family. What is your family, wife, I am to say wife, children, others?
I am married to a journalist. my wife is also a journalist. Yeah, also in Belgium, in Belgium, I have two children who are grown up and who are not journalists.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leruth. You gave us time and talked very openly. Despite that, some of the questions were very difficult for you to answer at that position at which you are sitting at the moment. But it's okay. It doesn't matter. Some of the questions are unanswered or are not being answered very clearly. But despite that, I am thankful to you and that you gave us time. Thank you very much.
Yes, I would be very interested. And once again, I probably couldn't answer all your questions, but you know, the president of the International Federation is not kind of God who has an answer to all questions. I am a journalist like you are.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.